Greetings, everyone. DFG at Get in Flight. Excuse my appearance pretty early, but I wanted to get this message out to you. It was on my mind, slept on it, so I wanted to share it with you just to kind of give you some additional insight on what you've heard me talk about over the last couple of days in terms of the new face of with that COVID-19. And that new face, as you already know, are blacks and Hispanics now, and are Native Americans. So whichever one of those three categories, in essence, all the different tribes of Judah and Benjamin, is who's being singled out right now, at least here in America. And I think it's important that you take a look at a video I'm going to show you. It's about 3 minutes long. And I want you to, as you're listening to, and this is going to be the Surgeon General of the United States talking, and I want you to listen real carefully to what he's saying. Again, the video is going to sound innocent. I mean, if you look at it, he's going to come across, real, not so much unassuming, but sort of, I got everybody's best interest in mind. But listen to what he's saying, and definitely towards the end of what he says. I want you to hear that clearly, and then I'm going to give you some commentary to help you to see if we can, let's say and see if you drew the same conclusion, and you get the same takeaways that I got when I first heard this guy talking. Okay, so again, give it a listen. About a little bit over 3 minutes long, and I'll be right back to you. Okay, ready? Let's see here. Let me get this going.
Hispanic leaders from their communities. And today, the vice president led a phone call that I was on with hundreds of African American leaders, including the Reverend Jesse Jackson, including Derek Johnson of the NAACP, including the National Medical Association and the Black Nurses Association, to talk about some of the alarming trends we're observing regarding the impact of COVID-19 on communities of color. And you've heard the stats in New York City. Hispanics represent the majority of deaths. In Milwaukee County, blacks are 25% of the population, but almost 50% of the cases and 75% of the deaths.
I named just two places.
So what's going on?
So I guess two places are now global.
But it's not surprising that people of color have a greater burden of chronic health conditions. African Americans and Native Americans, develop high blood pressure at much younger ages. And so that's likely to be under control and does greater harm to their organs. Puerto Ricans have higher rates of asthma, and black boys are 3 times as likely to die of asthma as their white counterparts. As a matter of fact, I've been carrying around an inhaler in my pocket for 40 years out of fear of having a fatal asthma attack. And I hope that showing you this inhaler shows little kids with asthma all across the country that they can grow up to be Surgeon General one day. But I more immediately share it so that everyone knows it doesn't matter if you look fit. If you look young, you are still at risk for getting and spreading and dying from coronavirus.
Meaning that everybody is at risk if you're around those kind of people.
Color, especially, less resilient to the ravages of COVID-19, and it's possibly, in fact, likely that the burden of social ills is also contributing. Social distancing and teleworking, we know, are critical, and you've heard Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci talk about how they prevent the spread of coronavirus. Yet only 1 in 5 African Americans and 1 in 6 Hispanics has a job that lets them work from home. People of color are more likely to live in densely packed areas and in multi-generational housing situations, which create higher risk for spread of a highly contagious disease like COVID-19. We tell people to wash their hands, but a study showed 30% of the homes on Navajo Nation don't have running water.
So Indians are nasty, dirty people, Native
In
Americans.
summary, people of color experience both more likely exposure to COVID-19 and increased complications from it. But let me be crystal clear. We do not think people of color are biologically or genetically predisposed to get COVID-19.
Oh, really fucking sure.
There's nothing inherently wrong with you. But they are socially predisposed to coronavirus exposure and to have a higher incidence of the very diseases that put you at risk for severe complications of coronavirus. But as the Vice President shared on the call this morning, this history, and I want you to hear me say this, it does not have to be our nation's future. We're taking steps now in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic to reach, protect, and strengthen all communities impacted by this disease, and especially our communities of color.
So now you're being targeted.
More details will be forthcoming, but we are actively working, as the Vice President and the CDC Director laid out today, data collection, targeted outreach to communities of color, and increasing financial, employment, education, housing, social, and health supports so that everybody has an equal chance to be healthy.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for...
When you hear that, see, that sounds innocent, doesn't it? It sounds as though he's saying, we're just concerned about people of color and Hispanics and Native Americans, and so, we don't want it to spread. But what he is doing, guys, he's dog whistling to the rest of America. Because as the rest of America listen to what he's saying, he's in essence telling them to be mindful, be careful around those kind of people. If you see people of those three ethnic groups, again, Hispanics, so-called Negroes, African Americans, and Native Americans, if you see these kind of people, be on guard, because these people are very contagious. These people are actually spreading. But don't worry, we're going to come up with some programs to target at them. Us, and who is us? The Center for Disease Control. Can you imagine a Center for Disease Control coming into our communities, evaluating and testing and, cordoning off or quarantining our people? You think they're going to come alone? Or you think they're going to come with the military behind them? And you heard him say they're going to target us. What does that mean? Targeting us. Why are we the ones being separated? Don't listen to that jargon, that BS about we live in close proximity to each other. There's not a major city in America where people don't live in close proximity to others. And most of these cities are they do not have a black, population. Almost none of these cities, for the most part, with the exception of, the few most of you guys probably know about, which are so small in terms of, the global country, that doesn't even matter. So in essence, black people, somehow or another, or Hispanics or Native Americans, somehow there's some kind of contagion, dirtiness about us. Because if we live close together, then that makes our communities nasty and dirty. But if you look at poor whites all over the country, and others, Asians included, or whoever all over the country, well, they're not that nasty, they're not that dirty. Doesn't that sound eerily like the civil rights during the time? You heard whites in Chicago in the early 60s. We don't want black neighbors because they're nasty and they're dirty. That's quote unquote. Now here it is, 2020. You follow? The same now lies being promoted by this dumb devil. This dumb, ignorant, stupid devil who is being used, by the national government and those who are in charge to ostracize us and to target us. And you may ask DFG, why just us? Well, first of all, they have a history of doing it, so obviously there is definitely a eugenics narrative to this whole thing, depopulation aspect to it. But also, the reason why they want to target us, or they're so willingly identifying us as who they're going to target, is because they know that we are the most defenseless people in the country. You see, if they try to pull that shit up in West Virginia, where you got a bunch of poor white people, those white folk come out them damn woods and out of the mountains with their damn guns. And they know it. They know it. And these folks will come out there shooting. And I say shoot first and ask questions later. If they tried that crap up in, Wyoming or Nevada, and some of these other poor countries as well. Poor states as well. These people wouldn't tolerate that. You follow me? They didn't tolerate it when they were trying to put those gas lines through the people came out there, those ranchers came out there with that whole free grazing thing. And they tried to put those ranchers off that property. Those ranchers came out there with their guns in Texas and New Mexico, and them damn federal agents with their behinds back home. So they know not to play with those people. But they know that we can't defend ourselves as an ethnic group. Native Americans, Hispanics, and blacks. So this has nothing to do with our, somehow contagious DNA. Although he wants to imply that has nothing to do with it. That's a lie. That's dog signaling. But he's targeting us because he knows that of all those, of all the other groups in this country, we are the ones who most likely can't get firearms. And if we do have them, they're small caliber firearms. And more than anything else, most of our men, as we already know, are not even in the homes, locked up, incarcerated, drug-induced, legally and illegally, that there is nobody to defend those homes. So they know they can come into our communities with aggressive behavior, knocking on doors, forcing their ways in our homes, and making, these critical decisions to save America, from these so-called parasites. And I was going to use a stronger word, but I'm not going to disrespect us because they're disrespecting us. But what I'm saying to each and every one of you guys, it's time to wake up. You know, it's interesting. Whenever these devils start using dirty tactics, they use numbers, guys. They will signal when they wanted to get everybody afraid. They created, you know, an attack, false attack, and a false flag attack. That's my personal opinion. Okay, just like you're entitled to yours, I'm entitled to mine. Somehow or another, they picked September 9th month, 11th, the 11th day, signaling 911. Somehow this happened. Just think about that. The chances of that happening with that particular date. And now it's the 9. You say 9/11, everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. Well, now we're in what? 2020. This is to get everybody, open your eyes, guys. We need you to see behind the veil, okay? We need you to see clearly. See, 2020 vision is the one that has great sight. Again, they're signaling. 9/11 then, now it's 2020. Think about it. So what is 2020? Does that mean now it's time to come as of us, the final purging of our peoples? The three ethnic groups that they fear that is the biggest threat to interracing, intermixing, and interpopulating with them. None of this, am I the only one coming to this conclusion? Am I the only one that this makes sense to? I'm talking about what they're doing. And they use this devil, again, to push out on a national platform to all America, all 270 million non-black, Hispanic, and Native Americans. To tell all of them to be watchful and be careful being around us because we're nasty, highly contagious, sick people. Isn't that some shit? And guys, again, what else can I say to, you know, as I bring this message to a close? I'm telling you, yeah, 2020, all right, open up your eyes, guys. If we don't come together now, guys, and start having great conversations, when I say great, I'm talking about highly intellectual conversations on what we need to do to stop this madness before they wipe all of our family members out. If we don't come together now and come up with some type of a solution and build internally inside of our communities, guys, we're going to be out of time. Yeah, Yah is watching us, but Yah said woe unto them in those days, in these last days. And if he said, if he did not, and this is in the book of Matthew, go read it for yourself. He said it's going to be so wicked in these days towards us that he would have to shorten the days, or none of us would be saved. That's a fact. I'm quoting scripture to you from that. That's in your gospel on this so-called Easter Rabbit Day, as a lie professing it is the resurrection of Yeshua. But you can go read, that's quote-unquote what Yeshua said in Matthew 24. Read it for yourself. It's an end-time chapter. And he says he'll have to shorten the days because if he didn't, none of us would be saved. And here comes these lying devils with this foolishness. Like the next thing, they're going to want to make sure everybody in our community is not only inoculated, but they're also going to make sure you have cards on you to prove that you've been inoculated. And if you haven't been inoculated, they're not going to let you buy, work, or have access to anything inside of this country. Mark it. You won't even be able to get car insurance without that card. You won't be able to come out in public places without that card. Mark it. And you're going to be the ones that's going to be required to have that card. Oh, you're saying, oh, that could never happen. You better go ask somebody about Nazi Germany when they started putting those little yellow tags on their arms to identify them as Jews, not Israelites, I'm at. Don't confuse them with us. But when they wanted to identify the Jews, they made them wear armbands. So don't tell me that they won't single out a group. And this is their history. These are wicked, evil devils. And using black, stupid, dumb puppets to bring forth their message. And if I sound pissed, yes, I am pissed. And you ought to be too. But more importantly, we better have some conversations, guys, and start talking and figure out how to defend our community, defend our family, defend ourselves. And I mean, that includes being locked and loaded. Now, I think you know what I'm talking about with that last statement. Peace.